The following presentation was delivered at the B2B Marketing Expo, where over 160 people came to see Dux-Soup talk about LinkedIn automation. We've had a number of requests for the slides, but also we know that some people who watched the presentation had some audio issues. So we thought the easiest thing to do actually would just be to re-record the presentation, which is what you're watching today. So my name is Adam Osman. I'm the head of marketing at Dux-Soup. We provide LinkedIn automation technology. With me today presenting is Scott Wright, our head of sales. I actually spoke to a customer, and what he told me completely changed what I decided to present. Originally, I was going to talk about how LinkedIn, with its audience of more than 1 billion people, is a highly engaged and active audience. 41 million people alone in the UK. It's the place where, if you're doing B2B lead generation, your decision makers, your influencers, the people you want to target are all on this platform. I was going to talk about how, from a social media marketing perspective, LinkedIn offers far greater ROI than other social channels. I was going to talk about the better response rates that you get on LinkedIn compared to email and calling. I was going to talk about how LinkedIn automation isn't just a more efficient way to spam your target audience. And the reason I'm not going to talk about all of these things is this guy. Meet Jay Inman of HG Insights. He's a growth marketer. What he told me actually changed what I plan to present today. Using LinkedIn automation for his company HG Insights, the leads he has generated have led to $1.58 million in net new closed revenue. So let that sink in. $1.58 million in net new revenue just from LinkedIn automation campaigns. Here's the cool thing. He uses all the tips and tricks that Dux-Soup and Scott coach our customers on when it comes to having the right foundation strategy for your LinkedIn automation. And what we want to do is give you the insights into how Jay achieved those amazing results. Personally, I believe the core to success for using LinkedIn automation for lead generation is actually more about a mindset than the technology. It's about having the mindset to get your messaging right, to work hard on that, to get your targeting right, so you're going after the right people. If you do those two, then LinkedIn automation is what gives you scale, and LinkedIn itself gives you access to that audience. And here's the really cool thing. It's quick, it costs a lot less than you think, and the results can be absolutely amazing. If you do it right, then what you get out the other end is inquiries, demos, appointments, downloads, and these things convert to revenue. But these are not isolated use cases. I spoke to a company called Promonio, who ran a single LinkedIn campaign for 3 months, which generated 92 appointments and led to closed revenue of £150,000. Or how about a company, Amped Marketing, who generated 349 sales appointments with CISOs in just 1 quarter. So CISOs, if you're not familiar with the acronym, is Chief Information Security Officers. These are not easy people to get through to. But the really cool thing is that customer has since gone on to join Dux-Soup and is co-presenting with me today. So let me hand you over to Scott, who will take you through some of the tips, tricks, and insights around making your LinkedIn automation work for lead generation.
Right on. So thank you so much, Adam, for introducing me here. So my name is Scott Wright. I'm the head of sales here at Dux-Soup. But as Adam had mentioned, I've been using Dux-Soup since 2017. I've been a hardcore user for it. It's taught me how to code. It's changed my life and basically built my career on top of it. I've managed sales teams, and now I get to work for the company as the head of sales, which is great. So I'm excited to be able to show you some of the success and some of the tips that I've had by being able to look into different areas on LinkedIn, using automation successfully and very well thought out, and trying to avoid yourself as spam. So without further ado, what is LinkedIn automation, right? So Adam kind of, gave you a preamble to it. But when we say LinkedIn automation specifically, what are we talking about? Well, what I'm talking about here is being able to automate your direct one-to-one engagement on LinkedIn and be able to create different sequences with LinkedIn automation tools like Dux-Soup with a connection request, followed by a series of follow-up messages, so that you don't have to be able to monitor when the person accepted. Automation will go ahead and send out, or detect when they accept it, send out a connection request. This can save you tons of time, and we'll be able to drive more engagements because it's just doing it for you, because most people don't remember to check their LinkedIn to do these other things. Now, it's really important to make sure, though, that you do not sound like spam or look like spam. So as many, or probably everybody on this call or everybody that's listening to this has sort of experienced, LinkedIn is cringy. And we've all gotten these cringy spam automated messages, every single one of us, right? So making sure that you tailor your messaging to be specific to your audience is going to be key, but then also understanding how you approach people with the LinkedIn dialect, that it's not email, it's not cold call, it's a little bit different, right? It's a social media network at the end of the day. And so then on top of that is you want to be able to create targeted lists or leverage different insights from searches or different areas like posts and events to do these types of things. And then you can personalize your messaging at scale. Speaking of events, that's actually one of the areas that I wanted to kind of kick this off with a little bit here. So on LinkedIn, a lot of people don't realize that there's a ton of events that are going on constantly. And so if you actually in the search bar on the top of LinkedIn type in AWS event, Splunk user groups, sales events, AI events, marketing events, LinkedIn automation events, right? You can type in anything you want and you'll find a whole slew of different webinars that are sort of coming up with a various multitude of different people that are going to be attending each one of these different ones. Well, what a lot of people don't recognize or realize is that when you click on one of those events, and if you attend the event, you can actually see the attendee list of those or of that event, right? So that actually becomes available to you. What does that mean? What is that going to do you benefit with? Well, with LinkedIn automation tools and a scraping tool like Dux-Soup, you can actually export the people who are going to attend the event and scrub it for everybody that meets your ICP, your ideal client persona, and then upload that with specific messaging that says something like, hey, I see that you're going to be attending this event. Thought it would be great for us to go ahead and attend too. Now, this same type of idea actually also goes for things like posts. And so with posts on LinkedIn, you can also make a lot of inference of, right? If somebody's posting about a job they have and you see a bunch of people liking this sort of post, a recruiter might be so inclined to click on the likes of that post and see everybody who liked it. Well, you can use a LinkedIn automation tool like Dux-Soup to extract those and then create automation or then create a sequence on automation that is about that type of a thing where you can infer. Now, you could also take into consideration competitors, right? So let's say I sold a competing product to 6sense. I don't, but let's imagine I did. And let's say I sold this. What I may be inclined to do here is there's 198 people that liked 6sense's post. I could open that up, scrub it for everybody that works at that company. So remove those. We'll use an automation tool to extract the post. Then scrub it for everybody that works there. That's about 30%. Then scrub it again for anybody that is irrelevant or doesn't meet my ICP. And then what am I left with? Well, I'm left with a group of people that meet my target audience that liked a 6sense post. What can I make an inference of? Maybe they use 6sense. Maybe they don't, right? You don't know for sure, but at least it's a point in the right direction to know this. And so you can then maybe create your messaging to sort of foster this and make the assumption that they use 6sense. Now, don't call it out directly and say, hey, first name, wanted to go ahead and connect with you and see, what's it like using 6sense? No. But what you could do instead is be and play dumb or play coy and say, hey, first name, out of curiosity, what's been your experience using these demand-based generation intent platforms, right? Have you ever used something like a 6sense before? What was your experience like? Right. That's a qualifying question that's going to be stand out a lot more different than, being able to come up with the normal typical spam that you're going through with these. Now, taking a step back for a second, it's important for you to remember what LinkedIn is. And I kind of said this before, but LinkedIn is a social media platform, just like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit, right? Except Facebook's meant for family, and then Twitter is meant for whatever. Reddit's meant for also whatever, the front page of the internet. And then Instagram's meant for photos and whatnot, right? So it's important for you to sort of treat it like a platform, like a social media platform as well. And so if you were using LinkedIn not for automation, right, you would probably be using it for a job or some of these other areas. And you may connect with people that you might be interested in, trying to get a job with and whatnot. And so it's important for you to sort of embody the sort of LinkedIn dialect of how you would maybe approach these people. So what you do want to do is, send a connection request of something around the lines of, hey, first name, looking to connect with others in the space. Curious, have you heard of XYZ event? Nod to the previous slide I was talking about if you can, leverage the insights from the posts or events that you're going to be targeting, right? Here's what you don't want to do, right? What you don't want to do is say, hey, first name, following up on my previous email, thought I'd try it here, let me know when you have 15 minutes for a demo, right? That is just so cringe and it's just so flat out. And it surprises me that people would still go ahead and do that type of a thing. But you would be surprised, and I'm sure every one of us have seen that before. So remember that LinkedIn is a social media platform. So it's social, not sales, and that you need to sort of embody the LinkedIn dialect. It's not a cold call, it's not an email. And it's important for you to know your audience and do a little bit of empathy of who it is that you're targeting and think like, would you respond to your own message if you were that person that you were targeting? And then just remember not to be spam at the same time. So just don't put something in there. So just kind of measure twice, cut once, and ask yourself the question of like, would you respond to that type of a thing, right? Then on top of that, everybody that's listening to this sort of call, you're going to fall into one of three different buckets. You're probably an individual contributor. You can use or a freelance person. You can use Dux-Soup and LinkedIn automation yourself, and use it to just build out your network and find new people and potentially new clients. You could also be, a marketing agency who manages other clients' actual profiles, right? And so if you're doing that, you want to make sure you're abiding by all the safety regulations to ensure you don't get that profile banned. So making sure you don't send more than 25 connection requests a day or 100 a week or, whatever it may be. Or if you're a salesperson, right, which a lot of people are, it's important for you to remember what sort of how people may perceive you on LinkedIn from a sales perspective. So a lot of people, like let's say, I'm a salesperson myself. If I was targeting engineers, trying to sell them a very technical product, right? If I try to connect with them on LinkedIn, they would probably look at it once and probably roll their eyes and maybe say, "Oh, I know what this guy absolutely wants," right? So you need to combat the sort of preconceived notion. So instead, right, almost leave the sales thing at the door and try to just network with them in the first place. And remember just to sell second. And on top of that, leverage things like partners and promote events to get people to sort of pay attention to you. And like I just said on my previous slide, and like I'll say again, remember, would you respond to your own message? And so if you are targeting engineers or you're targeting janitors or maintenance buildings or doctors, oncologists, police officers, you name it, local politicians, whatever it is, and think about the relationship and the pre and sort of the approach that they'll judge you on sort of connecting with you. A good exercise to do this is if you get a lot of connections on LinkedIn, think to yourself like when somebody adds you on LinkedIn, perceive that sort of inner engagement and think to yourself, okay, I'm going to be doing the same thing in reverse. What would I do the same? What would I do differently, right? In some of these sort of cases. And so just kind of put yourself in those sort of shoes of who it is that you're targeting, and you'll be able to be a lot more successful taking these into consideration. Next is to also remember not to use, or sorry, not, to still use, I should say, your email and cold calls if this is what you do currently, right? So a very rudimentary and simple way to use LinkedIn and Dux-Soup and LinkedIn automation, I should say, in tandem with emails and cold calls. This is one way. You can also integrate, natively, but do your cold calls and emails at the same time, right? So take an example. Let's say I have a prospect list of 1,000 people, right? I go ahead and put them into an email calling campaign that has, 12 steps that lasts 3 weeks or a month, right? Once everybody crosses the finish line, they come to the end and they're finished with that emailing and cold calling campaign. They're going to fall into one of three buckets: qualified or unqualified. They said, "Hey, I'm interested in chatting," or "I'm not." They picked up the phone. They said this or that. Or they're not going to respond at all, which that's what most people fall into. And then you're going to have this other category of people who opened your, email more than once or twice or whatever it is. They clicked on an asset, maybe downloaded something. They did something else to show intent or that they're engaged. So what I normally recommend and what I've done at previous organizations when I was managing sales teams and whatnot is we would use this with like a sales loft or an outreach.io or Apollo or HubSpot sequences or whatever it may be. And then we would run them through these types of campaigns. And then everybody who opened the emails or clicked on these or whatever it is, we'd push those through LinkedIn automation aspects first. Kind of the reason you want to do that also is because you can send hundreds of emails a day, depending on the technology and the tools that you use. And you can also make 100, 150 calls a day doing dials, right? Where on LinkedIn, you can really only send about 25 connection requests per day. Yes, granted, you can do, 100 to 300, 400 first degree messages per day, right? Depending on if you're paying for LinkedIn and other areas. But still, you have a barrier to entry that is not going to go hand in hand with the number of emails that you send and the number of phone calls, which is why you're going to want to maybe chop that up a little bit and just go after the ones that have been more engaged in these sort of areas. Then lastly, that I want to talk about is leveraging other people's profiles. This has been a huge, huge, huge game changer for me because when I found out very early on from a sales aspects, right? Going back to what I was sort of saying is a lot of times, or even marketing, people will, when you approach them, they already are thinking, okay, what does this person want from me? Well, you can switch the entire game up on them if you start to use other people's profiles, right? If you're a CMO, maybe you want to promote some of the content that you've released. And so you share the content directly into the person's inbox rather than sharing it on a post. I don't know why more people don't do this, right? You can basically using LinkedIn automation like Dux-Soup, you could put a URL in one of the automated messages that maybe is a content that you want to share and share it out directly to the network and get them. And you can even, cookie it or make a custom unique URL that can be trackable and be able to see in these sort of areas. If you're the co-founder of a company, right? Or even, if you're the co-founder or founder of a company or whatnot, and you're early on, right? You could be targeting your ICP and going and asking them questions about asking for feedback on your products, right? And maybe saying, oh, we're not ready for general release. We're just looking for a couple of beta testers. But given your background, I'd love to pick your brain and get your thoughts on this. This is not a sales call. Here's the thing though, even if you say it's not a sales call and you're asking for feedback, if the people, when you get them on a call and you show them your product or your service, and you talk to them and they give you your feedback, at the end of the day, what's really the difference between asking for feedback and getting that and showing them a demo at the end of the day? Sure, it may not be qualified, but it's still kind of a discovery meeting, right? They'll tell you if they're interested or not, and then they can progress forward. If you're product marketing, right, you can basically say, I'm conducting product market research and, would love to pick your brain on this, that, and this. If you're open to it, do you have 15 minutes to chat? If you're a solutions architect, this works really well because it's like engineer to engineer, right? Solutions architects are ones that go ahead and are the technical folks on a lot of these sort of calls that go in tandem with the salesperson. And so if you approach, if you're selling to a technical audience, using a solutions architect or the CTO or maybe the principal engineer's profile, if you can get them to say yes to having you manage their profile, then you can do a whole ton of damage in all kinds of different ways with different sort of approaches, which are going to have way different aspects and results when you go about this. And one person can easily manage 4, 5, 6, 7 different LinkedIn profiles using an automation tool like Dux-Soup and whatnot, sort of managing it on behalf of other people as well, as long as that you ensure that you're doing it, safely and responsibly, staying underneath the radar of sending out a couple of, 25 to 100 invites per week and so on and so forth. So that said, the key takeaways that I wanted you to take from this now is a very quick and dirty presentation, but is that LinkedIn automation can absolutely save you so much time because you don't need to monitor when somebody accepts your connection and it can send out the automated message. Now, people are against sending out automated messages, right? Well, that's why if you cater and build your audience list and who you target very effectively, you can personalize your messaging and you can leverage your list building to be able to personalize your messaging, right? So if you know that these people are going to be attending an event, then you can maybe leverage that in your messaging. If you know your ICP liked one of your competitors' posts, you maybe can bring up a conversation to see if they've ever used that type of a tool, right? These are all different areas that you can do to help spark up the conversation and network on LinkedIn first rather than trying to sell. Then combine this with the multi-channel strategy of emailing and cold calling and just, with emails and calls, you can do hundreds a day. And with LinkedIn, you can do 20 to 50, 60 a day, right? So you want to maybe, put the people who are engaged from your emails and cold calls and push those in through LinkedIn automation. But do remember, you don't want to say, hey, I'm just following up from my previous emails and calls and thought I would try you here, right? You don't want to deliberately say that. You need to do it in a little bit of an artistic indirect way. It's a little bit of that LinkedIn dialect that I've been kind of talking about before. And then use additional profiles to be able to create, different strategic approaches. And then at the end of this, if I can leave you with one thing, is to basically embody empathy from this and put yourself in the shoes of who it is that you're targeting. And then ask yourself the question of when you're getting ready to launch your automated campaign, would you respond to this? And if you are doing proper targeting and building your searches and you're building your lists effectively, and your lists and searches have purpose or a commonality that you can leverage an insight from to build your messaging on top of as well, you're going to get much better results. Combine that then with a product marketing's profile or a CMO, then you're destined for success. And that's exactly what happened to me and what I've been building my career on over these last years. So hopefully you found this informative, and feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you have any questions. And yeah, it was great talking. Thank you so much. Take care.